Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to the latest edition of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm your host for tonight, Gwen Richardson, and my co-host, Dr. Rhonda Lawson, will be joining us shortly. A few housekeeping notes before we bring on our first guest. One thing I want to do is adjust my seat a little bit. Let me see. Okay. Sorry about that. Those of you who watch the show know every year we do an award show, and the voting for the nominations for the finalists started yesterday. So if you follow us on Facebook, which you should be, there's a link to where you can vote. You vote for your favorites. There's no fee or anything. The whole process is totally free. But for all of the guests that we've had on in the last year, what we do is all the guests are included in the first round of voting, and it's 15 categories. And at the end of the voting process, which is about 2 weeks, then we close it out, we count the votes, and there are 5 finalists in each of those categories. And those 5 finalists will be included for the award show in May. So we'll be talking about it some more as the time goes on next week, and I think it ends the last week in March for the voting. But also, if you want to be a vendor at the National Black Book Festival in October, we're already at 60% capacity, so the slots are going fast. So don't delay, and the early bird rate ends March 31st. After that, the price goes up and everything. So tonight we have a great lineup, as we always do. We have 2 people who are repeat guests and 2 who are new to the show. And the first 2 are both new to the show. And our first guest is Jessica Watkins. She is a multi-published author, best-selling author. She started her own publishing company. You might see some books that say Jessica Watkins Presents, and I believe those are her authors. That's how all of her books are presented by people other than herself. So, Jessica, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And also, Jessica, you're going to be one of our featured authors for this year's National Black Book Festival in October. So people who want to meet you in person can meet you there. So, and you have a new book out. But first of all, tell us about Jessica Watkins and how she started writing and how your career evolved into all these different things.
Well, I've always been writing as a hobby since I was really little. My mother said I used to tell her stories when I was 5 and ask her to write them down for me. So that was always like a hobby for me. Like I didn't play double dutch or go outside and like play. I always wrote books up until I graduated from college, and then I attempted to self-publish my very first series, which was called Love, Sex, Lies. And then in 2013, I was signed to a independent publisher where I released Secrets of a Side Chick, and I released quite a few series under that publisher. And then I went independent in, I believe, 2016. And I've been independent ever since. I did sign a contract with Black Odyssey, and I released my first traditional release, I Love You Too Much, just a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And yeah, I've been writing full time since 2015.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, and I released a film. I forgot to say.
Right. And let's see, you're doing so many different things.
Yeah, I produced my first film in okay, it was before COVID. So it's 2019 when we filmed it. It didn't get released until about 2021. Right now it's on Tubi. It's based on my most popular title, Secrets of a Side Chick.
Okay.
And then I have my Black Reading is Sexy line where I have mostly book totes. I'm a lover of handbags and books, so I combine both of them. And my logo, Black Reading is Sexy. So I have book totes as well as like this denim jacket that I have on and other apparel that I use just to promote myself and my work. And I also have the Chicago Urban Book Expo, which is an annual expo that I have every year here in Chicago in September, which has been growing every year. We're on our 11th year this year. And I also have, I just,
When do you sleep?
it doesn't feel like I'm doing all this stuff until I say it. But I also have the international
Okay.
trip, Book Lovers and Friends. This is the second year. The first year we went to Cancun, Mexico. This year we're going to Montego Bay, and next year we're going to Antigua. And that's just like a relaxation for authors and readers and friends and family just to get together. Like we always get together on these trips and network, and like, you know, the authors are always working and doing seminars and selling their books. So I just want to have something that we all just get together and fellowship and have a good time and relax. So that's what Book Lovers and Friends is.
Okay. So now I knew about the Chicago, was it the Urban Book Expo?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know you were the person.
Oh
Are
yeah.
you the person who started it?
Yes, I started it and I managed the Chicago Urban Book Expo. Yes.
Okay. See, I didn't know
Mhm.
who was behind it. So I
Mhm.
I see the ads and I see them mostly. I'm real friends with Quan. And
Okay.
so Quan, and I've known him a long time since he really
Mhm.
first started. So he always, generally, he's there. He may be there every year, but he advertises that he is there. And then other people I'm connected to on social media will advertise it.
Mhm.
So I've seen
Mhm.
the ads for a long time, but I
Mhm.
didn't know who was the person behind it. Because you really never know. Because we put on the National Black Book Festival. My
Right.
husband and I started it. This is our
Okay.
19th year. But
Okay.
a lot of times people don't know who's behind stuff. And really, quite honestly, you don't, for me, I don't necessarily want them to focus on that. I
Right.
want them to focus on the overall event,
Mhm.
and not necessarily because I don't use it to promote myself.
Mhm.
In fact, I never get to attend my own event really because I'm working. I'm working the whole time.
I honestly don't want to attend my event. One year I wanted to not attend, but every time I say I'm not going to, everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, I just want to be at the event and like just experience it from the
Yeah,
other side of the table. Like the
yeah.
entire expo, I'm selling books that I never get to like really walk around and see what's going on. So
Me either.
one
So
year.
I don't really, well, I do sell my books because I'm an author too, but I do
Mm,
sell my books, but not, we have a line of apparel too, but it's t-shirts mostly, and
mhm,
we have design. So, um, but so I'm managing the event. I
mhm,
have other managers that manage different aspects, but I
mhm.
like to stay in one place. So if there is a problem, they can find me. So
Right.
I end up not being able to attend, walk around and to go to tables or pop into the seminars or panels or any of that. I don't. But maybe one year I will. Maybe this year, maybe I'll think about just doing one thing each time. Then I can condense it because there's no way I could, be at all the different places because there's a lot of moving parts.
It is.
So yeah. So does your event is it mostly like the urban fiction genre or is it multiples?
Well, we cater to all things Black books. So we have children's books, we have Christian books, we have interracial romance authors that come.
Okay.
We just center around African American authors. It started as the Chicago Urban Book Expo because I did initially have mostly urban fiction authors, but we expand to all genres.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, one of our viewers said that you are a great host.
Oh, thank you. I try to be. I
Yeah.
try to be. I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah. She said that your team is amazing. This
Oh,
is
thank
Social
you.
Book Club. And then uh Tony Bonita, who I don't know if she's been to your event, but she's an avid reader and book reviewer, and she told the audience to attend different book events to network because there's nothing like meeting the energy of meeting people who
Mm,
love books and write books and are all about books. There's a certain vibe to it, and
yeah,
it's not something you can get online. You
right.
can't we have our show. We've had the show. This is our sixth year. And we started the show because of COVID. We couldn't have our event.
Oh,
And
okay.
then we kept the show. The show was such a success. We have just kept it going. And so it's a good enhancement to what we do. We're able to uh,
Mhm.
showcase new books that come out, new authors, established authors when they have a new release. We have book clubs on, we have uh, book reviewers, we have publishers, marketers, anybody in books, anybody in the industry.
Mhm.
So for your books, how many books have you personally under the name author Jessica Watkins? How many have you
I
got?
published like
Mhm.
I've never counted. It has to be hundreds. I've never counted. I should count one day. But yeah, I've been publishing since 2015. So yeah, it has to be hundreds at this point. As far as other authors under my company, it's probably hundreds. For me, I have about, yeah, I'll stop counting mine too. I think I have about 60 now on Amazon.
Okay. So
Yeah.
do you have a certain lane you stay in, a certain um thing that you're known for as far as what's your signature thing?
I'm known for urban romance. I'm known for I believe I'm becoming known for having a good villain. And
Okay.
yeah, but I'm most popular for my urban romance, urban fiction and urban romance.
Okay. All right. And what's the setting for your books? Are they based in Chicago or are they different
All
places?
of them are based in Chicago. Even if they travel in the book, everybody lives in Chicago.
Oh, okay. All
I'm
right.
just not comfortable writing a book about anywhere else because I don't want to like lie. Like I don't want to like make something up about that city and not know what I'm talking about because readers are, even though this is fiction, readers are so specific. Like I wrote a
Damn.
book one time about some characters that were from Chicago, but they went to Freaknik in Atlanta. So this was like a throwback. So it was like 1996 or something, and it was supposed to be the last Freaknik. And I said they got on a yacht, and the readers on TikTok were like, a yacht? There's no ocean in Atlanta. And I'm like, wait a minute, my sister is the first lady of a church down there, and they go on a yacht every year for women's. So I have to like I have to research it. I'm like, wait a minute, am I tripping? I'm like, okay, Lake Lanier. There is a Lake Lanier. So I don't want to even like get into it with anybody else's city. Like even I wrote a book, The House of Virginia. I wrote it with this rapper. His name is Sue Surf. And that, okay, so I did write one book that was based in another city. And that was in Philly, I believe. But he had to tell me, I had to tell him, like, look, I need street names. I need the names of the neighborhoods. I need the name of like the projects. I need to know everything about this city because I can't say anything wrong. Because he had wrote a song that was like a story, kind of like the, R. Kelly's Trapped in the Closet and he tells a story.
Hmm.
So Sue Surf, he wrote a story. He wrote a song, but it was a story, and he wanted it turned into a book. So I just took it and turned it into a book. But I had him like he needed to tell me everything about that area because readers are very specific, even though it's fiction. They
They
want
are.
a lot of truth in it.
They do, and sometimes they can be wrong. But I only have two novels. I have 15 books, but I only have two novels, and
Mhm.
and I'm in Houston, and the
Okay.
setting is Houston because
Mhm.
I know Houston, I know the streets, I know and it's the same thing. If I were to even when in a character in the book uh lived in like an outer suburb of Houston. And
Mhm.
I just really, I like Googled some outer suburbs that weren't too far, like maybe 70 miles out of the city. And I picked one. It was called Brookshire. And then when I was writing about the character, I said, well, shoot, I need to know something about Brookshire. Otherwise, I can't say anything about it. So I took one Saturday, my husband and I drove to Brookshire so I could just get it. It's a small town, but so I could get an idea about the streets and the atmosphere and all of that. So I wouldn't just be making stuff up. So I do understand what you're saying about that.
Mhm.
It's important to be authentic, especially when you're describing things and people and places and where they're going to be going and what's going to be happening and all of that.
Right. Right.
So, so you've been your first personal book came out in which year
The first book I
when you
self-published,
self-published?
oh goodness, I think that was like 2010 or 9 or something. I only sold like 5 copies. It didn't sell a lot. I didn't know what I was doing. Like once Secrets of a Side Chick came out and that became popular, then I republished that initial series that I published, Love Sex Lies. I republished it because I was like, okay, now I know what I'm doing and everything. So it republished in 2015, but my first time publishing, I believe, was like 2009, 2010.
Okay, so this has been a
Yeah.
while. You're getting close to 20 years.
I don't know. I feel old. I feel like, I feel like old in the industry.
Well, you're established. Use
Yeah.
a word that doesn't it doesn't have a negative connotation. And we need veterans. We need people. I've been in the book industry um, in wearing different hats for 25, 26, 27, 27 years. I had to
Okay.
count because we started as an online bookstore, Cush
Okay.
City, cushcity.com. And then we opened a brick and mortar store for 10 years. We were still selling online, but we had brick and mortar. People were coming in the front door. We were shipping out of the back door. So, and then we started the festival in 2007.
Okay.
So, but we got out of the retail business. We started doing more marketing and promotion and things like that. So when somebody is your what's the name of your publishing company that you
Jessica
publish
Watkins
under?
presents. Jessica
Oh, okay.
Watkins presents. Mhm.
So it is Jessica Watkins Presents. I didn't know if that was just the moniker that was on the books or if that was
Oh,
actually.
that's the company, yeah.
Okay. So how do you decide who you want to bring on under your wing?
Well, I actually don't publish other authors anymore. I stopped about 3 years, 2 to 3 years ago. I stopped. So, well, when I was writing, when I was publishing initially, I wanted to give voices to, new authors. It was really hard for me to break into the industry. I had submitted query letters to many, many publishing companies over the years and got denied or didn't hear back at all. And that was like very frustrating for me because I really wanted to be a published author like my entire life. That's all I wanted was to see my books on the bookshelves one day. So I wanted to give that opportunity to people um faster than it happened to me. So I really enjoyed working with new authors. I really enjoyed teaching them how to go off on their own. Like I hope that everybody who graduated from my company was able to, be independent or move on to bigger things. Um, I published urban fiction. So I was really looking for like urban fiction, urban romance. Interracial romance is what I started publishing initially, though. Even though I'm an urban fiction author, my best friend actually forced me to publish my first book under my company because she didn't want anybody else to publish. And I'm like, girl, I have my own publisher. I don't know what I'm doing. And she was like, no, you're going to publish my book. And I'm like, okay. So that's how I initially became a publisher. But right now, I'm only focusing on my own work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what made you decide not to publish other people? Did you get burnt out? Did you was just
I was burnt out, and I felt a lot of it was very heavy for me if I released somebody's book and it didn't do what they wanted it to do. That responsibility was a lot for me, and I needed a break from that. Yeah.
okay? I
Yeah.
can I can I can imagine. I've had people ask me to. I've done some ghostwriting, but I've had people ask me about doing other people's work, and I don't have the patience. To me,
Mhm.
that it takes a lot of patience to work with all the different people and all the different steps that you have to go through to get the finished product, or even telling people, this story isn't really, you know,
Right.
marketable. Just,
Right.
it's like stepping on somebody's dreams or whatever.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do that. So I never got into that. I self-publish all my books, and
Mhm.
that's enough for me.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's been freeing the last 2 years, just focusing on my own work. It really has. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Like the authors that I've published that are doing well right now, and I see them, I'm like, that's great for them. Like S.K. Leslie and Tiffany Patterson and Keita Kendrick and even like Sheree Lewis, Tatiana Timmons. Is that? Wait, I think it was the other girl. I can't think of her name. I'm sorry. But I
Mhm.
guess a couple of them that are doing like really well still. I'm like, that's great. And I'm happy that I was able to like be a part of the beginning of their careers. And like, if I was to do it again, it would have to be with somebody who's like very dedicated because my specific genre is that industry is oversaturated. Like the urban fiction, urban romance, like that whole industry is oversaturated with titles, and you have to do a lot of work to stand out amongst those readers to get the success that you want. Like if you only care about just having a published book and being able to say like, okay, my book is for sale, my work is out there, that's one thing. But if you want to be like successful, and a lot of people see other publishers and they're like, okay, I want to do this full time, or I want my own company one day. Like it takes a lot of work, a lot of rejection, a lot of negatives. It's a lot.
Mhm.
You have to be a marketer. You're not just an author. You have to be a
Right.
marketer. You got to be a graphic designer. You got to be a promoter. It's like you got to wear all kind of hats. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, or you have to pay somebody to do those, which is extra
Or pay
cost.
somebody to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has to be done. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So, yeah, I get it. I asked Kiki Swinson the same thing. Well, I
Mhm.
asked her, did she think she was on the show in, I want to say November, this past
Mhm.
November, and I asked her because I got the feeling that the urban fiction genre was oversaturated, and I
Mhm.
asked her that, and she said yes. And I don't. It's not a genre that I read. I read. I'll tell you the authors I have read in this genre. It's only two really. Quan. I've read some of his work,
Mhm.
and Tracy Brown, who's
Mhm.
passed away. I read several of her books,
Mhm.
and but I just felt like uh, as a reader, my favorite genres are historical fiction and mystery thriller. Those, but
Mhm.
I felt like I was seeing the same theme, same cover, it was same plot. Uh, even the series were like, My Side Chick Hates Me, part one, part two, three, and four. I just it was saying the same themes and I wondered for readers, was it getting repetitious? Like
Well, I
even the
think
covers look
that the covers and the titles might seem a bit repetitive. And so that I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for myself. Like when I initially started, like the books I published at first before I got the independent publisher, the ones that only sold like 5 copies, the Love Sex Lies series, those books were titled like Thou Shalt Not Keep Me Wondering, Love Drug, like very like cutesy African American romance contemporary titles. Nobody bought those books. Nobody touched them. But as soon as I released
okay.
Secrets of a Side Bitch, everybody was and it went viral and everybody was
Okay.
mad and everybody talking about it on Twitter. So it's like
Okay.
so to the defense of our genre, like you have to, it seems like, well, back then you had to establish yourself first before you could throw out something that's not so repetitive. I try not to be it's from a publisher standpoint, as somebody who is making a living from this, like this is how I pay my bills. Like a lot of people like, no, it's your art, like do it comes from the heart. But no, like if everybody is buying hamburgers, I'm gonna make a hamburger. I'm not gonna sell tacos. I'm gonna sell hamburgers. Like that's what you're supposed to do. But when I think you say you like more historical fiction, things like that, but a lot of urban romance is like once you get into them, a lot of them dive into um different topics that you really don't expect. Like a lot of people, like a lot of my books talk about mental illness and family trauma and different things like that. So even though they might be titled kind of far-fetched, I think a lot of us have a lot of deep heartfelt content inside the cover.
Okay. Well, it was, and it still sells.
Yeah.
It went when it first hit the scene, and that was when we had our store. That was during like 2006, 7, 8 in there when it first like took off. And it was a new thing, kind of. Even though there were other street stories in the past, but they weren't considered urban fiction. It wasn't considered to be a genre per se.
Okay.
It was like an author would release, I'm just for the sake of example, Iceberg Slim and when his books were out. That was kind of like urban, but it wasn't called that. It was just his books,
Or street lit.
Yeah, they didn't even call it that.
Oh, okay.
It was just his books, and they were very provocative, interesting. I'm reading some of these comments. And she said, I cannot read the genre book after book. Like urban fiction. She can't read like every book that she reads, she couldn't do that.
Oh, okay.
But she also said it depends on the author. So, everybody has their own style. And it's all about telling stories.
Yeah.
So now we only have like a minute or two left, but tell us about your new book and what it's about. And do you have a copy of it where you can show the cover?
Well, I think you're referring to I Love You Too Much, which was my traditional release that released a few weeks ago. It's available on basically everywhere books are sold. Black Odyssey released this book. It is a second chance romance with a lot of suspense. I have a character named Damar who is he's a narcissistic character. He's very controlling of his wife. She is very submissive, very docile, but she is her heart belongs to her childhood sweetheart. But he was rough around the edges. Her parents were very religious and weren't in support of that relationship. So she went ahead and married Damar. She doesn't know all of the things he's doing in the background to be controlling, and he is having an affair with her best friend. So all of those things, those things come to the surface, and in attempts to keep his wife, he does a lot of outlandish things to keep her. So I can't say what he does, so I don't want to tell the story.
Right. You don't want to do a spoiler, but
Right,
yeah.
right. And at the same time, she is fighting these feelings that she has for her childhood best friend, who eventually does come to the rescue and saves her from her husband. So,
Okay. Second chance romance.
mhm.
Okay. Well, Jessica, we're at the end of our time, but thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I look forward to meeting you in person in October at the
So
National
thank you
Black.
for inviting me. Houston is
Oh,
my favorite city, so I was so happy to get that invitation.
oh, okay. Well, we are looking forward to you being here, and we'll have your books available, some your most recent books, and as well as some backlist titles um, available for sale and signing. And so we'll be in touch about that. But congratulations on all of your success in your career.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me.
Okay, you have a great night.
Bye.
Okay, bye bye. Okay, well, I did hear from my co-host Dr. Rhonda, and she's having difficulties. Let me see if she's going to be able to come on at all. She said her something has happened with her computer, so hopefully maybe she'll be able to come on later on, and if not, then I'm it for tonight. So anyway, um, our next guest is also new to the show, and his name is Geoff Bennett. And he is with PBS NewsHour and also a published author. But his book comes out actually next Tuesday, and it's called Black Out Loud. And it talks about the history of Black comedy. So, Geoff, it is pronounced Geoff, correct?
That's right. Yeah, and it's
Okay.
it's good to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being on the show. As a matter of fact, one of our company's oldest customers, um, told me about your book
Okay.
last week. I already knew about it, but she didn't know I knew about it. And she heard an interview you did on NPR.
Uh-huh.
And so she told me about it, and I told her that you were going to be on the show. So that I already
Well,
knew
great.
about the book. And so the word is getting out there. And, as an author. Now, do you have other books that you
No, this is my first book, my debut book.
And do you have a copy of it to show our audience? Do you have a copy of the ARC or the galley cover?
Not down here. No, not with me.
Okay, well, that's
Uh,
fine. But it's
yeah,
called Black Out Loud, and it focuses on Black comedy. Now, what made you uh, select comedy as
yeah,
this is your first book?
right.
What made you decide I want to focus on Black comedy?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've covered national politics for 20 years. The co-anchor of the PBS NewsHour. Before that, I covered the White House for NBC News, and I was a frequent anchor on MSNBC. And so when I had this opportunity to write a book, one of the first questions I got from one of the publishing houses was, why don't you write a political book? Why don't you write a book about Donald Trump or Joe Biden? And my response was, when you write a book, and you know this, it's the thing you're thinking about when you wake up. It's the thing you're thinking about when you go to sleep. It consumes so much of the space in your brain. And I didn't want to have politics take up any more space in my brain.
Then it
And I wanted
already
to
had.
focus, yeah, I wanted to focus on cultural coverage. And the
Okay.
book really began with a lingering sense of curiosity. And I was born in 1980, came up really in the 90s. And the thing that I was thinking about, especially watching how my teenage son consumes media on his phone, and it's all short clips, was, I grew up in an era where there was Martin in Living Color, Living Single, A Different World, Cosby Show, all on the air at the same time. It wasn't as if there was one breakout hit. All of these shows were on the air, competing, cross-pollinating, really pushing the culture forward. And so the question I had was, how did that happen? How did you have all of these young Black creatives have that access, the agency, and the money to be able to front those shows? They just weren't starring on those shows. They didn't own them. They created those shows. They had ownership of them. They were creating depictions of Black life. And so for Black folks watching, what you saw were different versions, different visions of Blackness. And that was huge. And so what I really wanted to do was unpack that moment, how we got there, what it meant for those shows to be on TV for as long as they were, and then how it all unwound. So the book is in many ways an oral history. So I talked to Barry Diller, who launched Fox Broadcasting Network, who created the environment for those shows to exist. I spoke to a number of the actors and showrunners connected to those shows about their experiences. And then, as I started doing the interviews and the research, approaching this like a journalist would, I realized that I couldn't tell the story of the 90s without telling the full history of Black comedy in this country. So the book traces its start all the way back to minstrelsy in vaudeville and works forward through, Red Fox and Moms Mabley and Flip Wilson and Richard Pryor all the way through the 90s. And so it's a complete cultural history of Black comedy in this country.
Oh, okay. Now the minstrel shows, a lot of them were blackface. They were white people
Yeah,
that wore
yeah.
blackface. A lot of
There
those.
and there were also Black actors like Billy Kursands, for instance, was one of the first um, nationally recognized comedians. But because, he was a product of his era, he had to perform in these really narrow racist constraints. And so even then, when he was really forced to do caricatures and minstrelsy and wear blackface, there were aspects of his performance where he was trying to infuse some dignity and some humanity, which is really interesting to go back and watch that now and see some of the pictures, because that was the only kind of performance they were allowed to do. And minstrelsy back then, that was mass entertainment. That was as if, you would turn on the TV now and watch ESPN or watch, Lifetime movies or whatever. That at the time was what people were doing and what people were watching was either white folks with black cork on their face or Black folks with black cork on their face mocking what they perceive to be Blackness.
Mm. Yeah, and then well, also in the earlier days of television, well, that would have been vaudeville, but in the early days of television, there weren't that many competing shows, so
Hmm.
there weren't there were only three networks, and so it's not like now we got a gazillion stations, channels, all kinds of
Yeah,
channels.
yeah,
So when families watch things, there were millions of people. It might be a third of the country watching something because it
yeah,
was so
yeah.
limited.
Excuse me. And that's worth really emphasizing because, yeah, to your point, these shows that I mentioned, they weren't just popular with Black folks. Had that been the case, that would have been great. But they were popular across the board. The Cosby Show was number one for years. A Different
Mhm.
World was number three. Cheers was number two. And then you add to that Martin and Living Color, Living Single. Arsenio was top rated in late night. And so all of this was happening in the 90s. And the question is, why? So Barry Diller, who started Fox Broadcasting Network, told me that he knew that Fox had to be different from the big three. ABC, NBC, and CBS in prime time, he said, the sitcoms they were putting on the air were fairly indistinguishable, and he wanted Fox to break out. So the first pilot he greenlit was a show called Not the Cosby Show, because the producers of this show knew that they had to be the antithesis of what the Cosby Show was. And that show went on to become Married with Children, which was this subversive sitcom
Oh,
that most people
I
will
remember.
remember.
I
So when
remember.
Married with Children took off and was successful, that then created the formula for everything else. And that's how you get a Keenan Ivory Wayans, who created, obviously, In Living Color. But even beyond creating that show, he had to create a pipeline of talent because the pipeline of talent for comedy, sketch comedy, was all about Saturday Night Live. And In Living Color was a very different show. So he had to go find actors and comedians like, Jim Carrey and David Allen Greer and Jamie Foxx and, don't forget Jennifer Lopez and Rosie
Was a
Perez came off
dancer.
that show as dancers, as fly girls.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a legacy to these shows too.
Now, Living Color was in the 80s. It was
It started
before.
in the 90s. April 1990 was when that show
It,
came on the air.
are you sure about that? Because I
Uh-huh.
remember
Yeah.
watching In Living Color in like the late 80s. The one they had when they had Louis Farrakhan as the reign of Khan. Some of the sketches was just so hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think it was the late 80s. I
No,
think.
I've done the research and
Absolutely.
it's been
You
copy edited back
sure?
and forth. It was April 1990 was when a Sunday in April 1990 when that show went on the air.
Okay, well, okay. I need to go back and look at my. I actually
And
have the all the seasons of In Living Color on DVD.
yeah, yeah.
I
And same, do you
they
have the
they were
Chappelle
so
show too?
hilarious.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Do you have the Chappelle show too on DVD?
No, I never got the show. I never watched the Chappelle show.
Oh, okay.
Like I only watched an episode here and there. I wasn't one of the. I watched Martin,
Hmm.
and well, before these shows, you had the Jeffersons
Hmm.
and Good Times. Before that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And the point I make in the book is that even though they were black sitcoms, they were created and written by white folks. And so what's so specific about the 90s is you had
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah,
I
you
see. I
had
see where
you
you're going
had
with it.
black writers in the writers' rooms and
Mm-hmm.
black creators, and so these shows were very specific and authentic. And in being specific, they were universal, which I think is also
Mm-hmm.
really interesting because you could make the argument that a show like Martin, if if you're living in the middle of the country and you don't know any black folks, don't have any black friends, why would you be tuned into a show like Martin? And it's because he was so specific and funny and authentic that there is a kernel of truth that resonates for people, even if, they don't know what it is to be a radio DJ in Detroit and have your friends always in your house cutting up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the 90s shows were because they were written by black people, the creators were, they were less prone to being stereotypical,
Hmm.
you know. It was more, it was really groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my daughter, who's will be 30 soon, one of her favorites is Living Single. She loves
Hmm.
that show. And it wasn't on when she was growing up, but it's just hilarious. The things that they do on there is the scenes, that the ideas, just the camaraderie among the characters on the show, the
Yeah, yeah.
interactions that they have.
Yeah, I spoke with Erica Alexander for this book, who played
Okay.
Maxine Shaw.
Yes.
And one of the questions I asked all the actors connected to these shows was, did you understand the cultural impact of what you were doing at the time? And they all said no, because at the
Mm.
time, what they were trying to do was create shows that were funny and resonant and that would drive people to watch week after week. But she said over time, folks like Kamala Harris and Diana Presley and Stacey Abrams would come up to her and say, "Your character, Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, inspired me to go into whatever high-powered profession it was, whether it was the legal realm or politics." And it was because, those shows allowed people watching to sort of play in their mind's eye what that would be like. And that's important. And that's missing now. I mean, these days we don't have a monoculture where there's no shared reference points. You might have a couple of
Right.
tentpole moments like the Super Bowl or
Mm-hmm.
Oscars or whatever. But for the most part, people are in their silos, doing their own
Mm-hmm.
thing, watching their own thing. You don't have family sitting down for a half hour,
Right.
watching these shows and then talking about them the next day with their friends or their work colleagues. And I think that's missing from our culture, and we pay a price for that.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Um, I shows used to be clean, you
Hmm.
know, when I was growing up. the whole family would sit around watching shows, and everything was clean. There was no
Mhm.
profanity. There was no sex. In fact, the even the shows where people were married, where there was a married couple, they didn't even sleep in the same bed, and they would be fully clothed. So, they would be head to toe, from neck to
Right.
toe. But the family sat around and watched. And from what I understand, before television, with radio, that happened too.
Hmm.
You had the whole family sitting around listening to the radio.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
do you cover movies? Do you cover films from
No,
like
so I cover so with the News Hour, we covered the full range. So for the most part, I've covered for most of my career, covered national politics, covering the White House, Congress, Supreme Court. But over the course of my work at the News Hour, we also do a lot of arts and culture coverage. So interviewing, actors and producers and authors. I do a lot of interviews of authors. And so my work really straddles hard news, covering hard news and political everything. Now it's the war in Iran, with the cultural coverage. And one of the takeaways from this book is that, especially we saw this with diversity policy, where diversity policy and DEI has been rolled back. One of the arguments I make in the book is that culture culture and politics move at different speeds, and there is a durability to the way the culture can move the country forward that does not exist with our politics. So I say all that to say, as we just saw with the unraveling of affirmative action and DEI, politics can be debated, policy can be unwound, but culture has a way of seeping in. So when you do have 20 million people sitting around their television at home with their families, watching The Cosby Show or watching A Different World or watching A Living Single, and seeing all these different depictions of Black life and Black joy, Black ambition, aspiration, comedy, that seeps in, and it really, I think, shifts the American imagination. And it's harder to unwind that as opposed to specific policies that can be undone at the snap of a finger. So that's the other sort of takeaway with this book, that the way the culture moves and our cultural products, whether they're books or TV shows or movies, that stuff really matters. And sometimes it gets scoffed at, sometimes it gets viewed as secondary, especially for folks who cover the news, other journalists, because they're always sort of focused on hard news and political news or foreign affairs. But I really do think that focusing on what's happening in our culture matters too. And this was a book that hadn't been written, really. No one had ever really looked at the 90s Black sitcoms in terms of their cultural impact. And that's what I sought to do with this book.
Oh, okay. Now, do you cover movies in the book about comedic movies, comedy?
To a lesser degree. So, talk about Eddie Murphy. I
Yeah.
cover movies in the context of the comedians, if, comedians who did that work. So Eddie Murphy obviously had an incredible film career. So did Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby to a lesser degree. Um, of course, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were box office stars with Bad Boys. And the story about how that movie came to be is in this book too. But the main focus is on television.
Oh, okay. So, is it's Fresh Prince in there?
Hmm. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So you are covering that. So what you start with vaudeville more or less as a backdrop or historical um,
Right.
beginning for it, but then most of the content of the book is about the 90s because of the creative side of
Right. Right. So it
it.
start with vaudeville and minstrelsy, and then push forward. So from there, you get to Billy Kirsan's Mom's Mabley, Hattie McDaniel is in there.
Okay.
Then it's Flip Wilson, Dick Gregory, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and then we get into the 90s, and each show has its own chapter. So Fresh
Oh,
Prince and
okay.
Living Color,
Okay.
Martin. Um, Family Matters gets a mention, because
Okay.
even though that often isn't sort of viewed as a quote unquote black sitcom, it certainly was. And ABC built their entire TGIF lineup based on that show. And then I end with Chappelle Show. So Chappelle is sort of the button on the 90s. That show was in the early 2000s, but that's kind of where my coverage of this comes to a close in the book.
Oh, okay. All right. We have some questions.
Mhm.
Someone said, do you sit down with your son and watch any TV together?
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for the question. We watch A Different World. I went to Morehouse. I'm trying to
Okay.
encourage him to go to Morehouse. So
Okay. Now,
uh,
is he in college or in high? Is he?
no, no, he's in middle school. We
He's
got a
in
little
middle
while
school.
ago.
Okay, so
Yeah,
so you're planting
yeah.
the seed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. The Cosby Show still holds up. In the book, I don't spend a lot of time talking about Bill Cosby's uh, the,
Issues.
the monstrous accusations and the stuff that he
Right.
did time for. I try to separate the art from the artist.
Oh,
But that show is, as we know, that show is hugely important. So yeah, so really, it's A Different World and Cosby Show that we sit down and watch. And then, the A Different World's getting rebooted by Netflix. So they're down in Atlanta right now shooting the next, or I guess the first season of the A Different World reboot, and Debbie Allen is connected to it. And in my coverage of A Different World in this book, everybody I talked to said she came in and she saved that show. And her sister, Felicia Rashad, after the first season, said to Bill Cosby, this show isn't working and you need to fix it. And the way to fix it is to bring in my sister Debbie. And that's what he did. And she went in there and cleaned shop in the writer's room and she went to Howard. So she had the experience of having gone to an HBCU and
mhm.
basically refashioned that show to be more authentic and real, and saved it.
Oh, wow. Now, someone else says, well, you did mention this. What inspired you to write the book? And they've been watching. So, and they talk about how many stations, channels there is. It's so fragmented now, and not just TV, but TikTok and what's online.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
had mentioned, I know with my stepson's children are, they're 13 and 11,
Mhm.
and they spend a lot of time just watching like shorts,
Yeah.
reels. It's like 5 minutes is too long, and they don't really watch movies that much.
hmm I know.
So I
It makes
wonder
me
what's,
sad.
yeah, I wonder what's gonna happen to
Oh my
to
goodness.
film to the
Yeah,
future.
I had to sit my son down and make him watch Coming to America because I was like, you need to understand first of all the classics,
Yeah.
but if you also have to understand what it is to create a story, to craft a story, to even craft a joke. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously, people of a certain generation always feel like their generation had it the best. I know I certainly do. But what we've lost with everybody on their phones now is you have potentially 8 billion storytellers because everybody on the planet basically now has a phone. Everybody can hold their phone up and tell their story and hit upload. But what you're missing is quality control. When you don't
Mhm.
have that gatekeeper system, when you don't have a studio system, when you don't have a writer's room where people are sharing ideas and literally, writing ideas on a whiteboard and figuring out how to come up with either it's like a sketch comedy or maybe it's a scene for a sitcom, working together collaboratively to put that together, to test it out in front of a live audience. All of that creates a better product as opposed to me just sitting in my room talking to my phone and uploading it. Now, there is some funny stuff on YouTube Shorts and on TikTok. Certainly there is. But there's something to be said about a process where you have, seasoned writers and seasoned actors and actresses who do this work together and put it on TV or put it on the internet or whatever. And it's quality work that sort of boosts and pushes the culture forward. That's what I fear that we're missing with everybody on their phones doing their own thing.
Yeah. Also, with the algorithm, uh, you're more likely to see the same things over and over.
Right.
That algorithm, and I've been, uh, I would say, a victim of it. You watch one thing, you see some, you see the thumbnail or the still, then you say, okay, well, this looks, what is this about? Then you click it, and then everything that's similar, and then you just get like flooded with everything, which means you really aren't getting any kind of balance or
Hmm.
even just variety. Where's
Yeah.
where's the variety in that? And it really does. It's really like the absurd gets promoted now,
Yeah.
or people are monetizing other people's uh problems or downfall or mistakes. You take somebody's a video of something somebody did that was really not good, it wasn't good for them or just bad all the way around, then you post a little comment and then you put it out there and it goes viral, and then that person's mistake becomes a monetization for somebody else.
Yeah. No,
It's kind of
it's a
like
crazy
really
system.
absurd. But I
Yeah.
don't know.
And it's
I don't know
especially a problem when it comes to news. If you're getting
for
your
sure.
news off of social media, what ends up happening is you end up in an echo chamber and you are
Yeah,
seeing things that reinforce what you already believe. And
right.
that's not good at all.
No, and
Yeah.
then now with the AI, there's a lot of news that's not even real. It's totally
Hmm.
totally made up.
Yeah.
Um, and but it looks real
Hmm.
because AI can make it look. It'll say breaking news on it, and it'll be about a celebrity, and it's completely false. But it'll be a story because AI can just write a story and people believe it, and then it's a I was going to use the term brave new world, but I don't know I don't know if that's the term I want to use. But I think we still will always need laughter,
Yeah.
um because if you focus on too much reality or realism or just seriousness, that's not balanced either. So
Yeah, and that has been the story of Black folks from the very beginning. We have always found ways to find joy and laughter, even when the moment didn't necessarily call for it, and even when all the chips were down. Laughter, comedy, joy has been used as a survival tool. It has been used as a tool of resistance. It's a way to expand, I think, the American imagination. So this book gets to a lot of that. I mean, if you are a fan of 90s sitcoms, this is a book for you. If you're a fan of Black comedy, this is a book for you. Cultural history, this is certainly a book for you. But for me, I definitely wanted to give those creators and those actors their props because to think of it, Martin Lawrence, Keenan Ivory Wayans, Will Smith, Yvette Lee Bowser, who created Living Single, Mara Brock Akil, who created Girlfriends, the list goes on. They were in their early 30s, maybe late 20s when they were doing this work. They had a lot of weight on their shoulders. And because they succeeded, it allows space for an Issa Rae or a Lena Waithe or a Quinta Brunson to create Abbott Elementary. So the history of Black comedy in this country, history, frankly, of Blackness in this country, has always been someone carrying the baton and handing it off to the next person. And what I found in this book is that that has certainly been the case when it comes to Black cultural creation. There have always been people doing the work, and when it was their end of the road, they sort of handed that baton off to the next person. And so the DNA is there. The DNA is in that lineage, and this book speaks to all of it.
now, where do you see comedy going in the future? Like do you see where do you have like a crystal ball from the research that you've done on it? Um,
Yeah,
how do you perceive it?
stand up is still really effective. I mean, Dave Chappelle is still doing stand up specials for Netflix, and they're more social commentary in many ways than they are pure stand up. Uh, Obviously, we talked about social media, TikTok and YouTube, so it's certainly there, but it's diffuse. So in some ways, an Eddie Murphy special or a Richard Pryor special or a Dave Chappelle special because so many people were watching them, or Chris Rock, for instance, or Kings of Comedy, Queens of Comedy too. So many people were watching them simultaneously. It really shifted the culture. Now it's harder to do that because there's so many people doing so many things in so many different silos. So that's the future. The future is there will always be talented Black comics. There will always be talented Black storytellers, but the platforms have changed. And so in some ways it gets harder to find those people and the voices become more diffuse, but the work is still there and the work is still good. It's just harder to find.
Okay. Well, the book is called Black Out Loud, and the author's name is on the screen, Geoff Bennett. And go check it out. It comes out next Tuesday. Let me see.
Next Tuesday, but you can pre-order it now, and it's actually in some bookstores already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So please support and please pre-order and buy the book, Black Out Loud. And I'm doing a book tour too, and you can go to
Okay.
blackoutloudbook.com, and all my tour locations are on there.
Okay. Where are you starting?
Starting in LA, and then DC, New York, Philadelphia, and ending in Atlanta for now. And then we'll do some more in early April.
Okay. And are you based in the DC in
In DC,
DMV?
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being a guest on the show.
Of course.
Congratulations on your first book.
Thank you. And thank you so much for
And
your interest and support. I appreciate you.
oh, you're welcome. Have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. Now, one thing about having a live show is that anything can happen. So, our third guest has not logged in. Rhonda is not here. I know that the final guest will be on. So I am going to see it's live, so I have to try to do it while you all are look. I'm going to try to see if I can reach the guest because this is unusual. Because what we do is we communicate with each guest four different times before they appear on the show, and that's why we have very few no shows. So I'm not sure what's happening with this particular person, but I'm going to see if I can find the phone number. And the third guest is a bookstore owner, and she's been on the show before. She was on the show a couple of years ago when she opened Harriet's Bookshop, which is in Philadelphia, and she has a book out about her experience with the bookstore and like a memoir. Her name is Jeannine Cook, and she just logged on. Praise the Lord. So anyway, because I was trying to find a number. So anyway, we welcome Jeannine Cook back to Black Authors Matter TV, and she is not only a bookstore owner. She came on before as a bookstore owner. In fact, she was during COVID, what caught our attention, she was delivering books on horseback in Philly. That's what really she got like national news coverage for that. And so now she has her memoir that just came out. It's called It's Me They Follow. And welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV. We want to unmute your mic so we can hear you.
Hi, hey, thank you so much, Miss Richardson. Thank you for the invite. Thanks for your consistency and all you've been doing. And you really, I mean, it's such an inspiration what you're doing for authors. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Well, you're welcome. And congratulations on your book, your memoir. Now, do you have a copy of your book handy?
Oh, nope.
No, you don't. Okay. All right. Well, it's called It's Me They Follow.
Well, so it's two books. There's It's Me They
It's
Follow,
two
and
books.
then there's also Shut Up and Read.
Okay. So
And
how?
so It's Me They Follow was a novel that came out in October. And then
Okay.
Shut Up and Read is a memoir that came out last Tuesday. And the way that it worked was HarperCollins, Amistad HarperCollins, they gave me a two-book deal. And the two books kind of speak to one another. One is a fictionalized story of the origin of the bookshop, and then the memoir is kind of like the present, like where we are right now, with the bookshop.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah, and
okay.
they kind of speak to each other, you know?
Okay. Well, they came out so close together too.
Yes, that's what
That's
everybody
unusual.
says. And so that was a strategy that my editor, she's amazing, Abby West at Amistad. But
Okay.
the idea was that you're kind of living in this bookshop world from two different angles.
Okay.
And that if they do well, which I hope they do well, and I hope folks that are listening help them do well, we can continue it on as a series of some sort.
Okay. So, um, were these your first two books?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I've
Okay,
never,
I thought so. So
yeah,
how did
both
you
of
go
them.
from bookstore owner to author?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's kind of it's a while to go from one side of the aisle to the other side of the aisle. I think it gives you a huge appreciation for the hard work of authors, and also helps authors, going out on the road, have a huge appreciation for what it is that we do as booksellers. And so it's like looking at the same, industry from different lenses.
Okay, so now how's the bookstore doing?
The bookshop is doing great. The bookshop is still rocking and rolling. Tomorrow, we have one of our customers who's going to be um, proposing to his fiance. Hopefully, she says yes and becomes his fiance tomorrow. So we're all like excited
Oh,
and
okay.
putting flowers up, and it becomes when we say it's a community space, we really mean it, right? Whether that be like we've had baby showers and weddings. In addition to all of our events, we have this series that like elders as libraries, where you can come and you can sit with an elder, and like about 15 people sit and ask one elder as many questions as we can. We had a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright in there last week, who we did a whiskey tasting with. So the bookshop is very eclectic. We call it avant-garde, and it's doing many things all at once.
Now, are these all your ideas? These all these different
It's a
things that
community.
happening?
It's a community, but yeah, I was a teacher for many years, and so I think, and then
Mhm.
I did curriculum development. So you know how sometimes life is preparing you for your next phase,
Yes,
right? And you don't even
yes.
realize it. What were you doing before you were doing this?
Oh, well, I mean, I've had like five different lives.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
but I have been an entrepreneur
Yep. Yeah. And when
all
you're
of
an
my adult
entrepreneur, I
life.
think you're
Yes,
naturally wearing a ton. You just get used to wearing being all the jobs.
right. And
It's
also, when you're an entrepreneur, you can have an idea and you actually can execute it without having to ask permission from
exactly.
anybody. And
Which I
so
think
now,
was necessary for
yes,
for certain personality types. It's
yes.
like you need that freedom to like, explore and innovate.
Yes, that the reason I went in, well, I went in business when I was 25 for many reasons, but mainly because I don't want to be under anybody's thumb. I'm not going to be controlled. That's then, that's ever since, that's now.
Yeah, I mean, and
I'm
it's
not
just a
going to do
natural
it.
fit.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, and
So,
I think in many ways, writing is similar, right? You get to like, this is the idea, right? This is what came forth. This is where we are with it. And then the risk of being an entrepreneur is the same as being a writer, which is, will people respond positively to what you've created and what you put out in the world? Um, will the results meet the input?
that is true. And entrepreneurs, we tend to be optimistic. Yeah, it took me many years to temper my optimism
Mm,
because when I was bringing up, my optimism would be so big. So, because it's the idea I would come up with, I thought it was so excellent that
right.
everybody would agree and jump on board. And I
Yeah.
had to learn that's not likely to happen.
Yeah, sometimes it
Not
just
on
takes a
your
little
first time
time.
out.
Exactly. It
You
just
have
takes a
to
little
build it.
time. Right, like right now we have the trolley tour. And I keep trying to explain to people like the trolley tour is like having a whole nother business, right? We have Harriet's bookshop, but then the trolley tour is you start at Harriet's and we take you to five other Black woman-owned businesses in Philadelphia. And in between, you meet like local poets and local musicians, and we take you to spaces that are kind of like, if you're not from Philly, you get a little behind the scenes into what Philly really feels like. Um, and but it's a whole nother business. And people are like, Jeannine, why don't you do that all year round? I'm like, excuse me, this is a whole nother thing, customer service and then working with the different shops and working with the it's like the musicians, the artists, the trolley tour conductor, like it's a lot. And
Yeah.
so that's the other thing about entrepreneurship and optimism is you have to, when you say temper it, it's like every great idea takes a lot of great work too,
And resources.
Right, right,
I mean,
right.
meaning money.
Yes. Yeah, like actual dollars.
Yeah, actual dollars.
And so Harriet sponsors the trolley tour. And
Okay.
we sponsored it the first year, just walking out on faith. I think that's the other thing that we don't talk a lot about in entrepreneurship is that it's truly a faith walk,
It
right?
is. It's a faith
Like
walk.
we walked out on faith, like hopefully folks will buy tickets and we'll make this money back. But Harriet's is going to sponsor it because I believed in the idea so much. And because it was so necessary, so many of our businesses were closing so rapidly, right? And so everybody was celebrating when they opened, but nobody was saying anything when they closed. Or people would be like,
Yeah, it's
oh,
true.
but not
It's true.
necessarily doing anything about it, right?
It's true.
Um, and
And
so here
mhm.
these businesses get an infusion of customers week after week for this one quarter of the year, and it's the best we could do for now. If we could, and as we, as I grow as a leader, as I grow as a human being, I believe that I can expand and I can work with larger teams, and we can continue to do this work in grander ways.
Yeah, it's you just you talking about some of the things you're doing just it took me back to some of the ideas I had in the past that some of which I pulled the trigger on. Some I didn't. And I did when we had our bookstore, because I don't know if I told you when you were
No,
on.
you didn't tell me before,
We
I
had a
don't think.
bookstore for 10 years,
Oh, wow.
from 2000 to 2010. My husband and I
Wow.
were both full time. But we
Wow.
were also selling online. So we started
Wow.
off selling books online.
So
And
you were
then,
early with the
oh, we
online.
were very early, December of 98.
Nice.
And then we opened the bookstore. And so we were shipping out of the back and customers were walking in the front. So, it was
And
a
then
lot of
and
work.
that's a whole nother conversation about working with your partner,
Yeah, it
right? Because
is.
that ain't
It
easy
is.
either.
Well, in my case, it worked perfectly.
Oh,
My
wow.
husband, we were both in business when we met.
Okay.
So entrepreneurship was our thing.
Okay.
He's retired now. He's 10 years older than me, but
Okay.
he was on the tech side. So when we started online, he handled all the tech part. He and his
Okay.
best friend. I'm on the marketing, and I was curating the whatever we were going to sell. So we never clashed. Like we were doing two completely different things at work. So, and we basically were always on the same. Uh,
Page.
well, our way of thinking was the same.
Nice.
We didn't have arguments about business. We
So
really
how did when you I mean, and if you don't mind, but
no, I
how
don't
did
mind it
you all
at all.
how'd you know that you all were a good fit early on?
You mean
Because
when we
there
met?
might be other folks like myself who want to do that, but it's like,
Okay.
you want to be selective about the partner.
Yeah, you do. Well, this is what I tell young women. I don't know about men, I know about women. Because
Yes.
I was married before. So
Okay.
when I had my first business, I was married to my first husband.
Okay.
He was a drain. He didn't help me. He didn't support. He thought, okay, she has a business. We have money. He
Go for it.
and yeah, go. So you can't have somebody that doesn't support what you do. It's better to be single
Yeah.
than to have a husband, especially because a boyfriend is not like a husband. Because a
Right.
husband, y'all are together legally, y'all are connected. Now, you know, God gave me the foresight to never have his name on the bank account for
Wow.
the business. So, and that was a blessing because if that were the case, he would have drained everything and it would have just gone under. So after him, because I had my first business at 25. So after that was a disaster. It was short term, but it was a disastrous relation. He was not ready to be grown up, and he was 4 years older than me. So that's what we see. My husband, now that I've been married to for 33 years, he was 10 years older than me because I said, you know what, 4 years is not enough.
Right, right. Like
Because I was always a mature person.
Right, I'm about to
so
say,
I knew
because
what I want.
you might be at one age in on paper, but you might be a different age in your
Right,
mind.
in mindset. And so he never grew up. It's like he thought he lived for today. Not, he never planned anything. So anyway, if you're gonna be in business as a female, you either need to just be single, or you need to be with somebody else who understands the importance of being in business. So I met my husband, Willie, my real husband, my true husband. If I hadn't moved to Houston, I would have never met him. So my first husband, he was the reason that I moved to Houston from DC. I had no plans to do that. But he just all of a sudden wanted to move. Saying that was my first red flag. He never had any plan. He never planned anything. But anyway, that's what got me here. And so I met my husband at a business conference. So we were already at a place where we both were in alignment with our thinking. And then in one of our early conversations, you know how you ask a man, well, what are you looking for in a mate? The first thing he said was, I'm looking for somebody who understands the importance of being in business. So that was all she wrote right there.
Go ahead, Willie.
Because he was married before, and his spouse, she's family, but she didn't understand his passion. She wanted him to be a corporate, just everything. And when you're in business, it's different. You gotta have, it's not for the faint of heart. You can't be weak, and you have to really be committed to it. It takes serious commitment, and it's a different way of life. So you need to be with somebody who's like-minded. If you all are in the business together, all the better. Some people aren't, and that can work too. But you can't be competing with each other. You have to be together. You have to really be one. And you have to like the person. Not just love the person. You have to like the person that you're with. Because my husband and I were together every day, all day, every day. Now we weren't in each other's faces because we did different things. We were in the same office, not room, but our offices. So you need to either be by yourself and know it, but I believe in relationships and marriage, and I think meeting the right person for you is what's important, but you have to be in the right place to meet that person. You have to be somewhere where you all are like-minded. So generally a club, I never met anybody decent at a club, and I don't know if that's okay. That was for me. That's not where you meet them. That's not. Most of the men in clubs are married or they're in relationships trying to do something on the side. They're not genuine. That's been my
I like the wisdom. Share the wisdom.
Let me say that. That's my experience.
We need the wisdom because I think like there's certain times where, so I got a chance to interview Alice Walker when her journals were coming out. And one of the things that I asked her, I said, you share a lot in these journals. Like, this is like, you telling us about who you had crushes on, who you didn't like, who you had beef with. You talk about your money. You talk about, so much, right? Health issues, mental health issues. And I said, what made you feel like you wanted to share so much of who you are with everyone? And she said, listen, Jeannine, like this wisdom, this life that I've lived should be medicine for the next generation, right? It should be something that we should openly, nothing is off limits, nothing is taboo, because if you can take it and you can use it and apply it, please do. That's the point. And so I appreciate you sharing, because sometimes folks don't want to talk about, like, if you got a solution, give it to us. So we're not out here, like trying to run and run and run to get to the point that you already been to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's when you're a woman in business, it can be challenging
Oh,
to
absolutely.
and meeting people can sometimes it it might seem like at the beginning it might work, because a lot of times men are attracted to women who seem to be going somewhere, but then it can be what you always have to make sure you include them in what you're doing, because and there are men watching the show. Men have egos, they have to be fed. And if you don't keep that in mind all the time, it causes problems.
Mm.
So I had a great mother. A lot of these things are, you see your mother. My mother was uh, very wise, and she taught me how to be a wife. That's what I learned from her. Now, some of the things that she had to deal with, she didn't want us to deal with, and I could see those, and you can sift through and find the what works and what doesn't. But one thing my mother never compromised on were her principles, ever.
Mm.
So, and she was a disciplinarian, but she was very loving, and she created the structure and peace in the home and all of that. My dad was a pastor, and so she was um, you know, a first lady that helped him. But she wasn't like some of the first ladies now where they're trying to, be public themselves and famous. She was a real helpmeet to him.
Mm.
So, but I learned about men's egos, they have to be fed. You have to keep that in mind. These are just real life tips.
Teamwork.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do. You have to. And so, but it is possible, and it's so don't give up. You just haven't met him yet. If he's out there,
Yeah.
but don't waste time with people who are not going to be men who are clearly not going to be it. So that's like a waste of time. It's
Right.
like blocking somebody who could be your man.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. So
I mean, it's so funny. My new litmus test. I'm like, well, did you read my book?
well, you might say, did you read a book? That
Right.
might be
And I'm just like, because it's like, how could you proclaim to be interested in someone who writes books and not even think to read them? I was like,
well, if that's your like, we have to know what we need. That's
yeah.
the other thing, because I'm an author too, but I wasn't then. So I needed somebody who was responsible. Well, one loved God. That is important, because if you love God, there's some things you're not going to do. There's
Right.
there's a there's a there's some there's a rudder steering you.
And so
Uh,
do you just ask that flat out when you first meet? Or
no,
how do
no,
you?
you can tell by somebody's conversation. You can talk to somebody for 30 minutes and figure out who they are. So that was number one for me. Number two, they have to love me,
Mm.
and they need to want to just be with me, and I'm not gonna be a side chick or not. I'm not dealing with none of that. That's just I'm not. So you have to know what you want. And three, they have to be they have to want to take care of me, be responsible for me. It doesn't mean that we're not both pooling our money, but they have to know they're the person who's responsible for the family. They
Mm.
have to know that already. Because I can't teach
Right.
a man how to be a man.
Yeah.
He has to know how to do that already. And if he doesn't know, he's not the man for me.
Mhm.
He might work with somebody else. I don't know. Some women want to have to give everybody the facts of life. That's not me. So anyway, we're talking about something in your
No,
book.
but it's all good. I mean, I think that's a great segue about a memoir, because that's what the memoir is about. The memoir is about life. It's real life.
Okay.
And it's interesting because the novel came out first and it was fictionalized, and it's a love story and it's this and it's that. And the shopkeeper who is the main character is like, running a bookshop. or wanting to run a bookshop, but also playing matchmaker by accident, you know. And so she's also very much into love and what makes love work and what makes matches sustain. Even if she can't figure it out for herself, right? And so it's no coincidence that we're talking about it. Um, and then in the memoir, you find like where the parallels exist and where they don't. I think the love story more in the memoir is the story between my own parents, right? And the ways in which they are able to navigate all of the complexities of what it means to be like young and wanting to have a family and, you know, being deeply in love, but also having such different versions of what love means. Um, and so it's like, how do you make this work? Can you make it work when you are when you have different definitions, you know, and it
Well,
being
that is true.
because we're talking about words and we're talking about books, and which really means we're talking about philosophy and ideas, you know,
Yes.
it's like how do you find alignment on certain things and in the midst of like lots of upheaval, right? My mother went blind when we were children, right? And so what does
Oh,
that mean for a relationship? My father was diagnosed with a terminal illness when we were children. So what does that do to a relationship? You know, these I mean, and this is real, right?
hmm
These are real things that happen in our real lives, and it's the way in which we learn how to navigate this life. And then you have this child that comes out of it. You have three children that come out of it, and throughout the memoir, my father calls me number two, right? He calls us all by our birth order, right? So he doesn't call us by our names. And I say to him, Dad, like, you know, it works for my sisters, but you know, number two also has another meaning. I don't want to be number two. And he's just, you know, he's constantly in the memoir telling me to shut up. Which is part, you know, it's kind of it's one of the reasons why the book is called Shut Up and Read,
Oh,
among
okay.
other reasons, right? But
Okay.
you have this whole, you know, when I approached Amistad HarperCollins about the book, I remember early on they were like, "This title is kind of aggressive, Jeannine. You know, shut up and read." Like, but when you dig into the actual memoir, you realize that it has a lot more to do with listening, and learning how to be better listeners to one another. Both, you know, listening to ourselves, right, and hearing that call that we often hear on our lives, but sometimes don't make the time to really listen to that call, listening more to one another. You know, I think we've gotten to a place in our society where folks are excited to share, excited to express. You know, social media really help with that. But the other side of that is learning how to be better listeners to one another. Even when people are saying things we don't necessarily want to hear, maybe that's the time to listen even more. Um, and then that third version of listening to something much higher than ourselves and much higher than our, you know, our day-to-day relationships. And so that's kind of why there's the thread about listening to Miss Harriet, listening to our ancestors, listening to those who came before us,
Yeah.
making space for them in our daily operations so that we can, you know, we're not trying to, like I said to you earlier, not trying to start from scratch with things that were
Right.
already
Reinvent the wheel. We
right.
don't have
You
to
know
do
what I
that
mean?
every time.
A lot of this was already laid out in one of the places that many of these ideas and concepts are laid out are in books, you know?
Yes,
Um, and
that's
so
true.
imagine if we just decided to spend more time shutting up and reading. We could learn a lot. We could, you know, there's all that data that says that reading has the same effect on our brains as meditation and prayer. And so
hmm
we could be, you know, all of those things could help us as a society in many ways, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, um, now how are the books doing? Have you gotten any feedback, Yeah.
I get so much feedback. We got like I got my publisher's weekly review, I got my Kirkus review, I got my shelf awareness. It's interesting to kind of like be in this world where, and for folks who aren't, authors yet or aspiring authors, there's all of these pieces to being an author that you don't necessarily hear about until you enter into the gates. And the ways in which those reviews like just like with a movie, they help to determine who's going to read or where you'll be positioned. And so we've gotten some really great reviews there. And then, I got a chance. I was the audiobook reader for Shut Up and Read, which meant that
Okay.
and not many debut folk get to do something like that, right?
That's
And
true.
so it means that folks get to kind of hear my real voice and connect with my story in a different way. And also for me, I'm just expanding, right? I'm expanding my lexicon, my what I can and cannot do in this world has just expanded so tremendously in the last few years, and what I believe I can and cannot do. And so the books are, from what I understand, they're doing really well. But it's also, Shut Up and Read's only been out for a week. I think
Right.
a week today.
Yes.
And
Tuesday's book
so
release day.
yeah, so it's Tuesday, so it's a week today, and then Jalen Hurts came into the bookshop, and our books came out on the same day, so him and I signed together, and I was like, "Whoa, this is like, this is huge, right?" Like all of these unexpected miracles, blessings, that keep coming our way are also pretty cool. So, like, the opportunity to go share the book in Paris next month, or like the opportunity to, it's just incredible. It's incredible because a book, I tell people all the time, I was like, book is not like a movie, right? Like where you got to get it done in that first weekend or it'll determine whether you have any success at all. A book can sit and it can bubble and it can shift, it can change. It can have its own life and it can live on without you for a very long time, forever even.
Yeah, our books outlive us. So that's one thing is
Yes, if we
awesome.
if we do it right,
If we do it right, well, even if we do it wrong, they might still outlive us. There's
right,
still a lot of times people pick up a book, and then it becomes a classic. So
right.
we're at the
You
end of
never
our
know,
time. You never know,
And one of
Jeannine.
the things that my one of my mentors tells me all the time, she's like, "Listen, Jeannine, when you look at Toni Morris and when you look at Alice Walker, you got to remember that once upon a time, these were women who were showing up to events where there were, five people in the audience. These were women who were showing up to events with books in their trunk, right? Selling out of
Yes.
their trunk.
Yeah.
Terry McMillan didn't start off as Terry McMillan, right?
Right.
Waiting to Exhale didn't come out the same year that she wrote the book. Like, so you have to understand the way that she asked me often, are you in this for the long haul? Right? Because
Mhm.
you could be in it for the flash in the pan. You want a little real quick. A little, some noticing or some whatever. But if you're really in it for the long haul, then you do what they say in Swahili, pasa pasa, you pace yourself. And so I'm excited about that part of it too.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of our time, Jeannine. Thank
Oh,
you
that was
so much. It was fast. We
quick.
were talking about all kind of stuff. Thank you so much for being a guest.
But we got to
Congratulations.
spend some more time together, even outside of the show. I think there's a lot to learn from you, of course, for me as a bookseller and as an author. So please do keep me in mind, especially if you're ever in Philly.
Yeah, and I was in Philly a couple of years ago, but I don't know if I next time I come to Philly, I will definitely let you know ahead
Yes,
of time
yes,
so we
yes,
can get together.
absolutely. Thank you again for the invite and have a good one.
You're welcome. Thank you, and
All right.
congratulations again.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Okay, you all got to hear some things about me that you probably didn't know. And there's something in my eye. I think it's a hair in my eye. But we're going to bring on our final guest. And yeah, I think I got it. And he's been on the show, but it's been a while. And he has a uh, new book, and he focuses on history. His books are very well researched. His name is Clyde W. Ford, and he's a professor, I believe, still. I forgot the school, but he does a lot of writing about history, Black history, and his new book is called A High Price for Freedom. So, Clyde Ford, welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV. It's been 2 or 3 years since you've been on.
Gwen, it's great to be with you again. And you're right. It was 3 years ago, I think, that I was on last.
Yeah, we'll be celebrating 6 years in July for this show.
Great.
So,
Congratulations.
yeah. Well, thank you. Longevity has its rewards.
It
So,
does.
do you have a copy of your new book with handy?
Right here.
Okay, A High Price for Freedom. And it's about some of the voices from the past that heretofore we haven't heard about or haven't heard from. And you have a way of bringing history to the forefront in a way that's new and different. And you did that with your other book when you were on before. So tell us what this book is about.
Well, excuse me. When I was writing Of Blood and Sweat, that's my previous book.
Yes.
It was just about the time that Juneteenth was made a national holiday.
Okay.
And I started to wonder, why is it that people like Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis were in favor of that when these were individuals which were so against the teaching of Black history? And the more that question bugged me, the more I wanted to know the real story behind Juneteenth. Now, in doing the research for my last book, I came across an interview from 1937 during the Roosevelt administration, the Works Progress administration, WPA. There were writers sent throughout the South to interview people who were formerly slaves. And there was a 92-year-old formerly enslaved man named Felix Haygood, who was alive in Galveston, Texas in 1865 for the first Juneteenth. And this was a fascinating interview because what he said about Juneteenth was completely 180 degrees different from everything that I'd heard from all that Black folks have been told and been telling each other about that day. And as I read what he said about what it was really like, I realized that somebody was pulling the wool over a whole lot of people's eyes. And I don't particularly like it when somebody pulls the wool over my eye. I want to get to the truth. And as I got to the truth of Juneteenth, a number of other issues in African American history rose to the surface. And I said, oh my God, this isn't just about Juneteenth. This is about African American history writ large, where there are so many things people think they know, including Black folks think they know about Black history, that the facts of history don't bear out. So that's why I wrote the book. It was really my own questioning, wanting to get to the truth behind Juneteenth.
Oh, wow. Now, I live in Texas. I'm not from Texas, but I've lived here a long time.
I know that.
And in fact, when I first moved here, a white gentleman that I was doing some work with asked me when my birthday was. And I moved here from DC, from Washington, DC. And my birthday is on June 20th.
Okay.
So he said, oh, your birthday is right after Juneteenth. And I said, Juneteenth? What in the world is that? I had never heard of Juneteenth. So I never heard of it until I came to Texas. And so Texas politicians like Greg Abbott and John Cornyn, and because they're from Texas, it has a deep meaning for people from Texas of all, well, Black and white. So that's one of the reasons why Greg Abbott was in favor of it. Now, I don't know why. I know it's a Texas-based originated holiday, but because that's the gentleman from Galveston you mentioned.
Right.
But I don't know why it's so favorable among white people in Texas. So maybe you can shed some light on that.
Well, I don't think most white people or black people know why it's so favorable. But after doing the research, I think I've got a good idea why. What we hear about Juneteenth is that it was a day in which ignorant black folks finally found out they were free. That's pretty much the bottom line, that we didn't know, African Americans did not know up until General Granger arrived in Texas that they were free. So the interviewer for Felix Haygood asked him this question in 1937. And Felix Haygood said to this interviewer, "We knew what was going on in the war all along. We had newspapers then just like you do now. We knew the North had won the war. We knew there was an Emancipation Proclamation. We just didn't know what would become of it." Now, that's a very different story than what we've been told. And the truth of the matter is that General Granger was not in Galveston to tell ignorant black folks they were free. General Granger was in Galveston to tell white folks, you can't enslave, you can't kill black folks anymore. In 1864, 63, 64 into 65, certainly as it looked as though the South was going to lose the war, slave owners in the South marched approximately 150,000 of their enslaved men and women to Texas. Why? Because Texas was considered to be a pariah state that would never, never submit to the North. Even if the North won the war, Texas would secede and they could come back and just pick up the people that they had left there. Boy, nobody tells you that part of Juneteenth, do they? Because that's the part that's a real ugly truth about what was really going on in Texas, that it was supposed to be a depository for African Americans, that white enslavers in the South could simply come back after the war, regardless of who won, and pick up the people that they left there, go back South, and keep them enslaved. When I understood that, I have to say, Gwen, I found that I could not support or celebrate a holiday that celebrated that aspect of our history, because in truth, what was going on there is we're really celebrating is not Black independence or freedom. We're celebrating white oppression, and I just could not do that. That's just one aspect of June 19th. At the same time that was happening in Galveston, go back to what was taking place in Washington. Lincoln had been shot about 3 or 4 months prior to the first Juneteenth, and to the week of Juneteenth, the newly installed president, Andrew Johnson, and I don't want to give away all the story that I tell in the book, but I'll just say this. Lots of land had been given to African Americans as reparation for slavery. And the first act that President Andrew Johnson did upon taking office was to take back all that land and give it back to white slave owners in the South. In fact, he signed that legislation, or at least began the enactment of that, about the first week, the same week of June 1865, that the first Juneteenth happened. So I just found there were too many things that were converging.
There's too many parallels.
Oh yeah, too many things going on that day for me to celebrate. And to be honest, I don't think it's a holiday worthy of celebration until the promises that were ripped away from African Americans have finally been delivered back to them.
Well, it's on the history books, and you can't take something away. I don't think any holiday that's been enacted has ever been removed. Now they have like the presidents and Washington's birthday and the Lincoln's, they merged those in the President's Day a while back, because that way they could have it on that first Monday, I think in February, or the second Monday, whichever it is. But there haven't been any holidays, to my knowledge, that have been made national holidays that were later removed.
Oh no, it's not going to be removed. In fact, most Black folks don't even want to know the truth because they'd rather go for the holiday. And I've talked to a lot of folks who say, well, maybe I don't really want to know the truth because we got the holiday. Let's just take it. But for me, that's not good enough. What I need is I want to know the truth of what happened. And I do think, often I'm invited to speak on Juneteenth, and I have to tell the people who invite me, if you want to hear the truth about that day, you may not like it. So you may want to think twice about inviting me to speak, because I'm not going to lie about what happened that day. That information is in the history books. It's there in the Library of Congress with this testimony of Felix Haygood. You can simply read the document that General Granger read to those individuals gathered in Galveston and realize what was really going on then. It doesn't take that much, but it does take a commitment to the truth.
Well, you're right about that. Now, maybe, well, I actually, it was from my understanding, it was 2 years after other Black people found out they were free.
Not true. Absolutely.
Okay, that part isn't true.
Not true.
Okay. All right. Well, that's why I'm asking these questions.
Right. Absolutely.
So we can get the facts
true.
out. Okay. So what is the truth on that?
Well, the truth is that African Americans in Texas knew they were free, but white enslavers kept killing and holding them back from that freedom until General Granger arrived in Juneteenth and said, he wasn't talking to Black folks, he was talking to white folks. You folks can't do that anymore. You have to stop doing that. You have to stop killing Black folks. You have to stop enslaving them. And as I said earlier, the reason why that was taking place is because Texas was a pariah state. And because of that, Texas was used as a repository where you could dump basically your property to white slave owners and pick it up after the war. It was almost like a safety deposit box. You could dump Black folks there and then come back and get them later. To me, as I said earlier, that is not worthy of celebration. That's worthy of outrage.
Okay, well, I agree with you on that. Texas considers itself, and after you live here a while, you really do become a Texan. There is a psychology and there is a attitude about Texas. And Texas has always seen itself as a republic. Well, it was a republic, and it sees itself as almost a separate country in some ways. Not as much as maybe in the past, but it is still a cowboy. It's a very entrepreneurial state. It's very, very pro-business. And, we don't have income tax. So it's, there's a certain Texas attitude. You don't really get it, the attitude, until you've been here a while. But I don't mean the negative things about what you're saying about the Juneteenth, because that is, it reminds me of the game Gossip. Where the game Gossip, as a kid, we used to play it in school. Right. And the teacher would tell the person on one end something, and the person was supposed to whisper it into the next person's ear. And by the time it got to the end of the line, it was something completely different than what was originally said. So that's kind of like what happened with the history of, or the synopsis about Juneteenth. It got retold into something that it wasn't.
And even if that retelling sounds better, it's still not what actually happened.
It's still not accurate.
And as a historian and as somebody who's concerned about what really happened, I want to know the truth. I mean, I want to know.
And I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, General Granger read that proclamation, and even the proclamation itself wasn't true. Because in the proclamation, it said that President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation and it freed all the slaves. Nobody who's ever read the Emancipation Proclamation could ever pretend that that document freed all the slaves. In fact, the document says itself that the only Black folks who were set free were those Black folks living in the states in rebellion against the Union. So after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, you couldn't hold slaves in Mississippi, but you could in Massachusetts. It was really not a document that freed African Americans from slavery. It was a psychological operations that the North used in hopes that it would upset the South and make them a weaker target during the Civil War. That's the truth of that document. Again, most people don't read it. It's right there. You don't have to go, you don't have to believe anything I say. You can simply go to the document and read it. It says right there in the small print that this document simply is applied to those African Americans living in the states in rebellion against the Union.
Okay. So then how did the winning of the war by the North, is that what made it enacted? The
Well,
freeing of the slaves?
listen, even the North's victory did not free African Americans. I mean, maybe the 13th Amendment might have, but the truth of the 13th Amendment, it was not even fully ratified until, get this, 2013 by Mississippi. So we're not talking about something, again, most people don't recognize that or realize it. I don't think New Jersey signed on to the 13th Amendment outlawing slavery until it was in the early 1900s. So this is an issue that people who don't really care that much about history just don't really take to heart and don't really look into. But if you do care about history, if you feel it's important because what happened in the past affects what happens now, you realize that a lot of what people have taken for granted and think they know is just not true. And that's really the reason that I wrote this book.
Okay. Well, what I'm getting at though is what it may not have been on paper, but
Right.
in practice, what was the action that freed the slaves? Was it the end of the Civil War? Is that
I
what?
don't think, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, come on, if you really look at it, Lincoln, even in issuing the Emancipation Proclamation and following up on that, Lincoln said he didn't really know what he thought African Americans should do after the war, other than not be violent and maybe go find jobs from where they used to be working. So what happened right after the Civil War, really, in my mind, and I think W.B. Du Bois said it the best, is that there was a moment in which African Americans stood in the sun of freedom, and then they were right back to slavery simply by another name. Because what was the system of slavery was replaced by sharecropping and
Yes.
lots of other activities, and you had the rise of the Klan and white citizens councils. And so in many instances, it wasn't as though the end of the Civil War freed African Americans as well. I would argue that it wasn't until the 1960s that voting rights were established, and now you've got those same voting rights attempted to be stripped away. So I can't really, I have to be honest with you, Gwen, and say from a historian's point of view, I don't see a point in time in which I can point to and say that point in time was when African Americans were really free, because we are still fighting for the same basic freedoms that we have been fighting for ever since 1619. And that is the right to vote, the right to determine our own destiny within this country. And come on, I mean, just look at what the Congress and the Supreme Court's doing with voting. They are gutting all of what has happened during the 60s when men and women gave their lives simply for the right to cast a ballot. And I have to say that gutting is being done in complicity with African Americans to this day, because based on the last two presidential elections, it was African Americans who actually, or the last two times Trump was elected, it was African Americans who helped put him into office. And so it's hard as a historian to look at what's going on with the history of Black history and have any great feelings that, oh, here's a time in which really African Americans were free from the shackles that they were oppressed with ever since we've been here since 1619. Unfortunately, other minority groups are experiencing those exact things today. Men in masks, they may not be white hooded masks, but they're in masks, carrying weapons, are killing citizens. It's happened in Minnesota, it's happened in Texas, it's happened in other parts of this country. So again, as a historian looking back, you see too many parallels for what happened then happening right now, and it concerns me tremendously.
Okay. So basically the change was that one person or a white person couldn't own a Black person. I mean, as chattel.
Yeah, in the South. In the South. That's
Okay.
what happened. In the North, and the British newspapers picked up on this. There was a newspaper in Britain that said, Well, that Emancipation Proclamation. What a hypocrisy! This is 1860s, in the
Okay.
1863 or 4 when it was first issued. I guess the truth of it, this British newspaper saying, is that the only way you can own slaves in the United States is if you're loyal to the Union, and that was the truth of the Emancipation. So yes, it may have been that the Emancipation had that in it African Americans in the South were free, but that did not free them. The end of the Civil War did not free them. It was more of the extent to which the 13th Amendment was passed, the 14th Amendment was passed. There was some voting rights extended. Eventually, those voting rights really were extended further in the 1960s. Those were the things which made a difference, palpable difference in the lives of African Americans when they could begin to elect leaders, often other African Americans who were more favorable to the interests that they had, which again, I go circles right back to this day and age, right back to today, when those very voting rights are being stripped from African Americans right and left, along with stripped from other minorities in this country as well, too.
A lot of states in the South, once Black people got the right to vote after the Civil War, because the Black population was so big in some of those states, you had a lot of Black elected people in the South.
Absolutely, which is why Du Bois said.
And then they changed it, and you didn't have. They really basically, well, they took away the voting rights by having these different barriers that nobody could pass. That white people didn't have to do it, but they, the literacy clause and the poll tax and things like that to keep Black people from voting. So technically, yes, they had the quote right to vote, but they couldn't exercise it because of the barriers.
For the first 10 years after the end of the Civil War, Blacks were in record numbers elected officials throughout the South and across the country. Then after that, based on what you're talking about, all these various poll taxes, literacy requirements, and other things, the Black vote was suppressed. The other thing that's so important in that is that it was the rise of white violence and white supremacy and the rise of the Klan, which further intimidated African Americans from even attempting to go to the polls. That continued on into the 1960s with the voting rights movement. And that is exactly the gains we made in the 1960s are exactly what's being taken away now. Look, the president is in the process of signing and pushing this voter ID bill, which is basically a kind of like going back to the old literacy test. Only this time it's not just African Americans which are going to be subject to this. It's all people who don't like the president. And so this, I forget the name, Save Voting or Save America or Save Voting, something, name of the act that he's called it. I mean, that name of the act is a lot of BS. What really it's all about is let's keep away from the polls people who may not vote the way we want. There's no difference between that and what happened in the 1860s with the rise of the Klan and these various voting tests, as you've suggested.
Well, you are a doctor, right? I was going to say Dr. Ford.
Yes, I am.
You are a doctor. I thought you would be. Now, where do you teach?
I don't anymore. I used to teach at Western Washington University, Introduction to the African American Experience. It's been many years since I taught then. I'm basically retired now. And I work, although I'm retired from the university, I do work for HarperCollins Publishers as the director of the Martin Luther King Jr. Library there. So I'm still very engaged in African American history and the importance of African American history in our lives today. And we've got a great opportunity with the Martin Luther King Jr. Library because we've got a direct connection with the Martin Luther King Jr. estate, who have given us the right over 10 years to publish old material and new material on King's legacy. And so, for example, I've worked on putting together a number of books about the importance of what went on in the 1960s and its relevance to what's happening today.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being a guest again on the show and for continuing your work and bringing history to the fore, little known history and some history that you're debunking that we needed to know facts about. So thank you so much for all your diligence, and have a great night.
Thank you, Gwen. I look forward to being on when my next book comes out.
Okay, we'll be watching. We keep our ear to the ground.
Great. Okay, bye now.
Okay, good night. Well, that's it for this week's show. We'll be back next week for another amazing episode of Black Authors Matter TV. If you haven't gone to vote for your favorite interview in 15 categories, go on our Facebook page and you'll see where you can link over to access the ballot. And the voting ends April 2nd, I believe. So you have lots of time to do it. We'll see you next Tuesday night. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.